Hey friends, happy Wednesday. It is Ask a Flower Farmer and it's your friend and host Lisa Mason Ziegler, and y'all, it is blowing a gale here. So glad hope everybody's having a great week. We are here with the exception that it is literally like 15 to 25 mile an hour winds, pretty steady out there. That's why I'm not out. I'm at the farm, but I'm not out in the garden. So friends, this is the way this works. You can, during the next 30 minutes, I'll do my best to answer as many questions as possible. And to get your question answered, just post it in the bubble that's at the bottom of your screen that has a question mark in it. And that way I won't miss your question by having to scroll through everybody's name. So I hope everybody's kind of like getting in the mode for cold weather, because it is chilly here. We're going to have our first frost apparently tonight, which is actually about 2 weeks earlier, but then it's going to be 70 degrees next week. This is classic for us. That's why I always am prepared with, I always have enough row cover to cover everything, y'all, for these unexpected turns. Although I won't cover anything for this little run of cold weather we have tonight, because I only fall plant the cool flowers that are truly winter hardy in my winter hardiness zone. So that means as long as they're pretty established and everything's been planted for 2 or 3 weeks and they're pretty happy and healthy and they've been rained on and are growing, and our seeds have sprouted of those that are direct sown. So we're pretty well prepared for that, because the minute we bring out the row covers, then that's just a lot more work. It's a lot more clutter in the garden, which kind of makes me a little crazy, to be honest. So we're prepared and we're ready, but I bet we have 2 or 3 more weeks before we really get into cold weather. As I said, it's going to be in the 70s next week, which is really going to help push some of the cool flowers that were just planted, that are kind of small, that were planted a couple weeks ago, that were on the smaller side. But our direct seeded stuff is pretty small, so it'll all be beneficial to that. Which brings me, in case you haven't heard, y'all, I'm doing the first in-person workshop that I have done in years. That's really my jam. That's why I do Ask a Flower Farmer, y'all. I love interacting. I love answering questions. And so we decided a couple weeks ago that we would do it. Because I have a facility at the end of my street is where it'll all start. Our church has this chapel that has has big screens for PowerPoints, great setup for lunch, the whole 9 yards. And then we're going to walk down here to the farm. That's November 18th. And there still are a few more seats left. Y'all, it's only $295. It's like, we have to make it so we can do it. But we don't want it to be so much that it just really knocks people out, because this is really for the people that are getting started, new into this perhaps, that just really need that little bit of additional information and actually seeing it. So it's November 18th. You can find the links in my profile. The link is also right at the top of our homepage, on all of our pages at thegardenersworkshop.com. And surprisingly enough to me, we're having people come from all over the country. I just assumed it would be people that live in Virginia, but we have people coming from Indiana, Florida, Ohio. So we're really flattered by that. And y'all, I just can't even tell you how excited I am about it. Doesn't matter what the weather does. Because we'll be inside for the lectures. We can do all the demos on the farm just about inside if we had to. And we can look at the gardens with umbrellas, right? So that doesn't even bother me, but we're really going to take a look at my native border, how that really works in and is a big part of my organic growing. And anyway, totally stoked for y'all to come. And I hope to see you guys then, because it's going to be it's going to be a very exciting day and packed full of information. So I think that this afternoon I'll be going out to do perhaps the very last harvest of the garden because of the cool temperatures. You know, the warm season stuff just isn't happy. So I'm really going to hit the eucalyptus hard. So we'll have some stuff for the show on Friday, the fresh stuff to show. There's some eucalyptus out there, lots of gomphrena, and some various other things. So hopefully I'll get that all done this afternoon, and we will be off and running. But the cool flower garden is almost completely planted, and that's really fun. That's like, and you know what? Once again, y'all, Instagram, when I hit the bubble to see your questions, they're not there. That happened last week, if y'all remember. So post your questions in the comments, and I'll just have to scroll and find them. We've really been experiencing lots of issues with Instagram posting posts also. So they've got, you know, there's always new stuff. Speaking of that, yesterday, the registration for my in-person workshop, the sale, you don't charge, you shouldn't charge sales tax on that stuff, and we have to actually refund the first people that actually registered. But Kelly turned it off, and then it started giving glitches to people, and we've been going back and forth. So by some stretch of the imagination, if you go to register and you can't, just call the office. They're there today until 4 o'clock and tomorrow. So you can register by phone if you need to. But that's the joy of technology, and I know Instagram has that problem too. So y'all just post your questions in the comment. I'm just scrolling through looking for questions now. So anybody that posted a question in the bubble, it is not showing me your question. I am so sorry to say. So so post your questions here in, let's see, it's still not working. So there's been questions posted in there, but when I go to them, they simply are not there. So cool flowers, we are still starting seeds. I have lots of seedlings in here. But the key thing about planting late with cool flower transplants is you can get away with planting transplants late because you can cover them and kind of cuddle them a little bit, right? But you have to have the place prepared. So that's the big rush, is to get your beds prepared before it gets wet and frozen wherever you are. Our soil has been, now that we had good rain, it'll not really even dry out all winter. That's kind of the way it happens. That's why cool flower seeds are so easy to germinate outdoors in the garden, those that prefer that way, because you don't have to worry about keeping them wet, right? I'm getting ready to start my sweet peas in Swift Blocker. Do I need to soak the seeds overnight? So glad you asked that. I did not soak my seeds, and if y'all want to look at my dried flowers for a nanosecond, let me go get my tray of sweet peas that just dropped, that just popped. Stand by, y'all. So look at all my pretty dried flowers while I'm gone. I'll be right there. All right, I'm coming back, y'all. So I no longer soak sweet peas since Bailey and I talked about it, and so I'd actually follow Farmer Bailey's sweet pea growing steps, and that's what I did with these. This is the Swift Blocker 27, and you can see they're just coming along. These were started the 19th of October. So what is today, like the 1st or the 2nd or something? The 1st. And these, so Bailey's method is he does not soak the seed. He sows the seed, and that was the Swift Blocker 27. Those are 1.5-inch blocks, which seems to be really a perfect size. And then instead of even keeping them inside, I set them outdoors on my carport where I harden off. And we've been having, 60-ish degree days and cooler nights. And he said that is, I think his perfect germination temperature is like 55 to 70 degrees. If I'm doing that from memory. They're definitely slower to germinate this way. But they're doing great. So right now, there's only 2 blocks that don't have sweet peas either starting to crack or growing. And, they could be coming or they could have been duds. Who knows? So that's Hyacinth, which is literally my favorite sweet pea. I've grown all the sweet peas. We used to import them from England. And Hyacinth, Hyacinth is what you'll find it on our website. There are other people out there that also call it April in Paris. That's one of the many common names that another seed company has named it. Is the most vigorous, the most fragrant, and just the most hardy sweet pea and I've grown a bunch of sweet peas. So check that out. We only grown, these will be planted out in the garden probably next week. Bobo is actually sick this week, so it's kind of put the brakes on a lot of the things around here. But next week, you want to plant them when they're like 4 to 5 inches tall, and happy and healthy and not tall and rangy. So no soaking of the sweet peas. Do we cover our plants or let the frost hit them because they don't just stay alive all winter, right? So bloom on Wren. So here is the important question or the piece of information. If you only fall planted those cool season hardy annuals that are winter hardy in your winter hardiness zone, which would mean that they survive winter in your conditions, they would not require covers to survive, but covers definitely just may keep them better quality. But what I find is when people don't understand, this is like it in a nutshell. You only fall plant those cool season hardy annuals that are winter hardy in your winter hardiness zone. And how do you know that? You have to know what your winter hardiness zone is. And I know on our seed packets and on every seed on our website, we say what winter hardiness zone we at least know that plant is hardy to. So if you're in zone 6, which is north of me, I'm zone 7/8. If you're in zone 6 and you look at a flower and it says only winter hardiness, hardy to zone 7, you shouldn't fall plant that plant because that's saying it only survives winters up to zone 7, which is warmer than zone 6. And if you fall plant a zone 7 in a zone 6 and don't provide a lot of extra protection, which is really hard to do, they're going to get winter killed. So that's the big question, Bloom on Wren, is what are you talking about? Is it winter hardy in your zone? If it is, then covers just really keep the foliage in better shape. And also think about this. Think about standing outside. Today's the perfect example. I think it's like 50 degrees outside. The wind is blowing. 50 degrees is not so cold. But if I didn't have this jacket on, and standing out in the wind without this jacket on, I'd be really cold really fast because the wind's whipping me. That's exactly what cold weather does to your transplants all winter. And so I've always covered my winter transplants, not because they needed the cold protection, but I wanted to protect the plants from all the wind whipping and also from varmints. So they do stay alive all winter. They do not die back. These are plants, little baby plants that go into winter when they're winter hardy in your zone. They go into winter and they are like little frozen popsicles all winter. But that top plant just anchors the root system that's getting established all winter. And then comes spring, and when you see all the shoots that come up around it, I'm telling you, once you figure it out, what you can fall plant and then what you can very early spring plant, which is the next opportunity to really that all of us can actually plant, you will just never know how you even survived without having cool flowers, y'all. As I was working on stuff this morning, I was working on social media texts, words, and I write about that. Cool flowers are what I launched my flower farming business on 25 years. It's actually 26 years ago now. But they, of course, weren't called cool flowers then. I just learned about cool season hardy annuals. And I can tell you, I would not be a flower farmer today had I not learned about and just pushed cool season hardy annuals to their limits. As a field grower, I mean, it's what made my business profitable. And so you got to figure it out, and you only learn to do that by learning from your mistakes. All right, I'm in Maryland, zone 6A, 7B. Over the winter, at what temps can I take the row covers off on those nice sunny winter days? That's a great question. So my kind of rule of thumb is if particularly afternoon temperatures are going to be going above 55 degrees, but one afternoon of 55 degrees isn't really that big of a deal. But if it's like, oh my gosh, all week we're just going to have these really nice days and the temperatures in the afternoon are going up above 50, let's just say 50, I would take my row covers down. I mean, as long as it's not going below 25 at night. Why you take them down is you don't want the plants under those row covers to get overheated, not so much overheated, but encouraged to start growing again. Because they're dormant, right? When the cold temperatures are out there, they just sit out there and wait for their time, right, to start growing. Well, if it all of a sudden gets 80 degrees under that cover, which it will when it's, 55 degrees out there and you're blocking the wind and it's a sunny day. So I generally take the covers down when it's going to go above 50, but I typically only do that if it's going to be 50 for several afternoons. It's a lot of work putting them up and down. I will tell you that back when I first started growing cool flowers 2.5 decades ago, literally I put the covers up usually a week or so before Thanksgiving, finally when it got cold, and then I didn't touch them again until February, literally, except for peeking. That's not the case now. So that's a really good question, and that's why you don't want to overheat your plants. And it's not so much that you're going to cook them, because that's not really the challenge. It's encouraging them to start growing again. What temperature would you say your grow room is? I can't get blocks to dry out in 24 hours and plants don't seem happy. So Stephanie, depends on what time of year you're talking about. For cool season hardy annuals, it's usually about 70 degree room temperature. But I will say that room, because it's facing southeast and has big windows, that sunshine coming into the room, which is not what I use as light, but it heats the room up. And that really pushes the blocks to actually dry out quicker. And you're really smart to figure this out, because that is the key to healthy plants. I hear all kinds of things, right? People write us all kinds of messages. But I know that some people like to use larger size blocks sometimes because they feel like they don't dry out as quick, and so they don't have to water every morning. But friends, that's how plant life cycles work the best, is they get watered in the morning, they go through the day getting dry, then the roots are getting all this oxygen when they're dry, and then you water them again, So, yeah. So warm your room up, and you warm it up to what you need to do it. And I will say, I prefer T8 and T12 lights. They do get warm, but they don't get hot. That's one of the issues I have with LED lights, is they're cool. They don't heat up at all, and they don't help with this, is what I'm saying. So good luck with that. I hope you kind of figure that out. Little Meadow Flower Farm, Lisa. Had my first successful season with Triloba. Now that the birds have enjoyed most of the seed, should I cut them back and leave it, hoping to have a good stand of it too? It's a tender perennial. So, no, we don't ever cut it back. So if you're saying that you are planning on leaving it to reseed itself, which is what it does. It is not a long-lived perennial. And, they confuse us with all this language, right? And I talk about this in my new book, The Cut Flower Handbook. I can't wait for y'all to have the book, by the way. We'll be offering pre-orders later this month, so keep your ears up for that, because I have a special resource that's only going to be available with the pre-order orders. Anyway, so Triloba can perennialize. dies, but it's not a long-lived perennial, meaning the plant that blooms this year, that same plant sometimes does bloom the next year, but it doesn't usually live longer than that. It's the fact that it is a heavy reseeder, and it reseeds itself, and new little plants grow up right next to the plant you have, and it makes us think it's a perennial, but it's not really. So we don't cut anything back. We leave it because it's habitat. The birds use it all winter. And it reseeds, and because it just grows right up through it the next year, it doesn't really hurt anything. So, and two, our patch is so big that we would never even think of cutting it back. I mean, it would have to be bush hogged, but we would never bush hog. That's like one of our native islands. So I'm glad you had a great year with it, but it will reseed, and you should have a good stand of it. We're trying to get that. Wait a minute, I'm trying to get back to where I was. See, this is why I don't like having comments. All right, so I'm getting back to where I was. In the comments, the questions, because it's so easy to miss them. Anyway, good luck with that. Bloom on Wren. 7 should be good. It was just Bells of Ireland. Oh, good, good. All right. So another question here. My direct seeded beds have germinated. Only problem is I can't tell if they are my precious cool flower seedlings or weeds. Help. So then it's one of the things that I talk about in Cool Flowers, in Vegetables Love Flowers, and I know I talk about it in my course a lot, is when I direct sow, you direct sow in straight lines in V troughs, and you wouldn't be having this problem right now. And in fact, I took pictures. I don't know if you looked at the reel that I posted this morning. That was literally pictures of my Cool Flower garden as it is this morning, and the direct seeded stuff. And there's little weeds mixed in some of the direct seeded because I haven't hoed them. I am going to hoe them once before the workshop, but I want us to hoe the beds during the workshop to see how that all works. But you are able to hoe quickly and efficiently because you know if my nose was the trough, I know that everything along here is the seeds, and I can just pull my hoe through the rest of the bed. So the pattern that you plant in and putting them in that little trough that I make with my hoe really, really helps that. And, next year you won't make that mistake because it is tough. Been there, done it. I mean, it took me a couple years to really figure out. It's like I got to make it easier to know where my little seeds are sprouting. So I would say if you think you did plant in a kind of a straight row, just use your stand-up hoe in the open area between your rows. And I don't do any fine-tune weeding until the seeds are up about 3 to 5 inches. So I hope that helps, but I know exactly your pain. Rimrock, hello there. Are we going to see you at the ASCFG conference next week? I wished you were. I am not able to travel anymore just because of not of my medical issue, but I have a family member that it's just really, really difficult for me to leave. So that's what's keeping me from conferences. I actually submitted a video that'll be played, I think, during whenever the time is, the farewell to Judy, who is the executive director who I worked with for a long time. So let's not get me bawling. I thought about it for a nanosecond, but it's just not possible right now. So sorry about that. I really, really wished I could. And I know y'all are going to have a great time. Please just don't pinch. Give Mima and everybody a hug for me. I mean, just so many people I haven't seen in several years now that I would really, really love to see. And I know y'all are going to have just a really great time. What else reseeds that we can leave standing? So as a commercial grower, we don't really do that in our working cutting garden, but for natives, in our what we call our native habitat islands, those are large beds that we don't mow, we don't weed. They're anchored usually with a strong reseeder, which for us is Triloba, because we just love Triloba rudbeckia. But we have not really experienced another native that is that strong of a reseeder. That would really work with. And it makes it really difficult to manage them because you can't really cultivate, you can't prevent weeds. So I don't really treat anything else that way. There are some perennial natives that are in my Trilobia bed, like Joe Pye weed and Rudbeckia maxima, which is actual perennial, just thinking ironweed, stuff like that, solidago. But no more things that I would never rely on anything reseeding for my production. The Triloba is so strong, you don't even have to worry about that. And I've just never experienced another one being that successful, right? Yeah, and I see somebody sharing that was stuff that reseeds for them, and those things, I do have stuff that reseeds in my garden, but never enough that you cannot not plant it into production. That's the part where, I mean, again, being a professional grower means efficiency, profitability, and efficiency. And it's really, really hard to cultivate properly and to have enough and having efficient harvesting, because I did that. I used to call it my self-appointed garden. There's a lot of stuff that'll reseed. I mean, bachelor buttons, bells of Ireland, Rudbeckia, poppies, all of those. But it's like a free-for-all party in there, and you can't really get rid of the weeds because they're everywhere. And then if you don't get rid of the chickweed, it just takes over your bed and your seedlings get smothered. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if you are a starting flower farmer, by all means, I did it for a couple of years and just realized why I couldn't do it, why it didn't work well once I'd needed a ton of larkspur, needed a lot of bells of Ireland. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, there is a lot of stuff. Rimrock, I really would love to connect with you. We will sure miss you. Family comes first, though. And that is the bottom line. And, when you go into business, we have this dream, right, of going into business. And then sometimes we allow our businesses to overtake our life, which oftentimes our families are the very ones to suffer the most, whether it's your kids or your grandkids or your parents that are aging or a family member that just feels too vulnerable for you to leave. And, what's the point of going into business if you can't see to them first? And so that's my motto. I mean, I used to travel 60 to 80 lectures a year, y'all, before the pandemic. I mean, that was what I built my business on. And I really, really miss it. And that day will come again probably, but it's just not right now. So I really hope y'all have a great time. At what low temperature would you use double the row cover? So it's all about temperatures, right? So again, I want to say I only plant what's winter hardy in my zone. So that means that anything I have planted out there, unless it's a test, which I do have a test this year. I have a couple of tests actually. Those that are known to winter over in my winter hardiness zone don't need a cover. But as I mentioned earlier, covers are beneficial to preserve foliage, to encourage not freezing quite as much so that they get an earlier start and all that kind of stuff. So I know that I used to, but I no longer do it. Back when we were growing, we were in high production, bells of Ireland was a huge crop for us. I mean, I could sell every stem. And my sister never had enough stems for our bouquet program. It's like all of our florists wanted it, all of our supermarkets wanted it, and my sister wanted it. So there was never a stem to spare, right? So I was very protective of that. Very, very useful, very low input, just seeds. They're direct sown. They don't even have to be planted. I plant them and we're pretty much done. And so when it would drop down into below 20, I would feel the need to put a second cover on bells of Ireland because I felt the need to protect it. But I will tell you that in years past since then, we went down to 9 degrees for a week. Was it last year? Though every year we have crazy weather, y'all. Get used to that as a farmer. But last year during December is when that polar blast came through and we went down to single digits for a week. And I even had some bells that were not covered at all in a raised bed over here, the demo bed. They came through like a gem, and all the ones out here survived. So, you know, it's all about an insurance policy. Why not double if you feel threatened, if it's important to you, if you need to have it, you know, if it's really crazy conditions for your winter hardiness zone. All right, so I'm sorry, all my nose is itching. I don't usually eat bread for lunch, and I had a sandwich because I didn't have time to make salad. And I'm pretty sure that I have an intolerance for something that's connected to that anyway. My 6-week-old rudbeckia in my grow room has stalled at 1 inch, and can I plant them outdoors even though they are quite small? Yes, I would. Oftentimes, the conditions of being inside, especially if something is 6 weeks old, we typically plant at 4 to 5 weeks. Whatever their issue is just getting worse. So I would plant them outdoors in your bed and, you know, just be sure they get watered well, they stay moist. For at least a little few days before, you know, while they're getting established, and maybe throw a cover over them, because this is what, I mean, covers buy you a month backwards most often. That's how it kind of changed. That's what Dave and I have actually kind of come to the conclusion of. No scientific information, just from our experience. And so if you put a cover over it, as long as it's well watered, so it's going to get warmer underneath there, it'll just encourage them to grow a little bit more. I was just looking at my rudbeckia. Well, that's one of the pictures that I posted this morning in that reel. Our rudbeckia is just booming out there. And so I'm really happy to see, I was happy to see that it's cold now, but of course it's going to be 70 next week, so all that stuff is going to grow. So I hope that helps you. I would definitely plant. Whenever I have a transplant that's struggling, and it's more than 3 weeks old, sometimes planting it is the solution. All right, y'all, it's after 1 o'clock. Oh, so let's just, here's Wanda. Fox Hollow Peonies. This is our friend Wanda, who's an Alaskan peony grower, and Wanda is one of our students, as is Rimrock. And we just love that they come and hang out in our lives. And Wanda, I am so sorry to not meet you. But she is going to also be at the ASCFG conference. And y'all should definitely have a TGW student meetup. Rimrock, are you listening to this? Y'all should do that. And then you should do it live in the class. So in our closed Facebook group, so I can chime in. Let me know when that's going to be. That would be so totally awesome, right? And Dave will be there, Wanda, and he's actually coming to Alaska after the conference, so y'all can connect. And y'all, please take images of y'all together and share them with me. I would love to use them. And we need pictures of Dave with his students. So I'm putting y'all in kind of charge of that. Dave needs a little help getting that done sometimes. So we need great images of Dave with some of his students. We'd love to have those to use for marketing his course. So y'all are making me even sadder and sadder that I'm not going to be there. But I know that y'all will. Wanda, see that Rimrock is requesting messages. I know that you two ladies can get it done. That would be so incredibly awesome. And would love to have a picture. And we ought to do a Facebook Live, and I will be there. I have to know when it's going to be, right? So, all right, friends, till we meet again. I'm actually going out to cut flowers for the show on Friday, because I think tonight might take them out of here. And can't wait for the show on Friday. And Sharon, we're doing some, Suzanne will be demonstrating our cut flower accessories. I'll show our last harvest, as well as lots of other fun stuff. And I still have sunflowers too, by the way, y'all. And I will cover them for tonight, so they'll keep on going. All right, friends, till we meet again, see you on Friday. Ciao.